Hello everybody, today we're going to talk about fractions and decimals on the number line. Okay, so everybody's always afraid of fractions. You know, they're so much more difficult than decimals. You just got to have practice with them and you'll get used to doing them. So just like we did with other numbers, graph the number and its opposite, so 3/4. So, you know, just change your scale on your number line. 3/4 would be right there. Its opposite would be -3/4. Okay. Now, what's the distance between those two? So what's the distance from here to here? Well, that's going to be 3/4 from here to here, and another 3/4. So 3/4 plus 3/4. That's 6/4, which reduces to 3/2, which is 1.5. Okay. So no more difficult than doing other numbers. All right, graphing -1.6 and its opposite. I'll give you a second to do this one on your own real quick. And then just jump back on and make sure you got it right. So -1.6 would go right here. And its opposite would be 1.6, which is right there. And then if you needed to know the distance between them, that would be this distance, which would be 1.6 plus 1.6 would be 3.2. So very easy, especially when you just got decimals. Okay, now you graph these and their opposites and then check your work. Okay, so 2.5. Now this number line doesn't have the fractions on there, so 2.5 you're going to have to estimate. It's going to be right between 2 and 3. Now the tricky part is getting the opposites on these. People make mistakes on this all the time. So the opposite would be -2.5, and I see a lot of people do this. They go to -2 and then they go a half back this way. Well, that's not -2.5 there. That's -1.5. -2.5, see how 2.5 is between 2 and 3? Well, -2.5 is going to be between -2 and -3, so it's going to be right there. -3.5, okay, let's be careful, this is the scary one. -3.5, -1, -2, -3, and another half is going to go right there. Its opposite would be 3.5, which would be right there. Okay, so just be careful with the negatives. Nobody ever misses the positive ones. They always mess up the negatives. Okay, compare -1/2 and -3/4. Okay, so I've just got a number line here, and you know, a number line takes time to draw it, but sometimes if you're unsure, that's the best way to make sure that you get the answer right. So here's what I would do: is I would start with I'd start with 0. I don't know, right here, and I would probably count by 1/4. So this would be -1/4. -2/4 is -1/2. -3/4. -4/4 would be -1. That's really all we have to do. So -3/4 would be right here, and -1/2 would be right here. Okay, now remember that the smaller numbers are always on the left, so I can compare them and say, well, -3/4 is less than -1/2, and how much less is it? Well, each one of these spaces right here is 1/4, so it's 1/4 to the left of -1/2. Okay, on this one, we're going to compare -4 5/6 to -4 1/6. So here's what I would probably do on this one: is I would start here at -4, and I would count by sixths. So this would be -4 1/6. -4 2/6 would be -4 1/3. -4 3/6 would be -4 1/2. -4 4/6 would be -4 2/3. Then it would be -4 5/6, and then 4 and 6/6 would be, that'd be -5. Okay, so I can go ahead here and put my -4 and 1/6 right there, and -4 and 5/6 right there. Okay, I like to figure out what's the distance between these two things. So what's the distance here if I'm going to compare them? Well, that's basically, I don't have to worry about the 4s, but 5/6 minus 1/6 would be 4/6, which is 2/3. So that distance right there is 2/3. Okay, compare -3.08 and -3.8. Okay, so on this one, I would probably start at -3. And you can count by 0.1, -3.1, -3.2, -3.3, -3.4, -3.5, -3.6. Okay, I'm going to need a couple more spaces here. So this would be -3.7 and -3.8. Okay, so here's my -3.8. Now, -3.08, that's going to be between -3 and -3.1, because remember, -3.1 is actually -3.10. So this is going to be like right about here. And since it's between these, I always like to label it, so it's really clear what it is. So I would say that -3.08 is greater than -3.8. Okay, a Chinook wind is a warm mountain wind that causes rapid temperature changes. So what tends to happen is you got a mountain like this, and the weather comes in, and it tends to build up and build up and build up right at the top. It gets blocked by the mountain. It doesn't just flow through. It gets blocked by the mountain. It builds up high. It tries to go over, but it gets very cold very quickly. Okay, lots of times it'll dump a lot of rain on this side, and then it comes down really quickly on the other side, and it drops the temperature a lot. So the table shows 3 of the greatest temperature drops ever recorded after a Chinook wind occurred. So on which date did the temperature drop the fastest? So on January 10th, 1911, it dropped 3 1/10 degrees Fahrenheit per minute. On November 10th, 1911, it dropped -5/8 of a degree Fahrenheit per minute. And on January 22nd, 1943, it dropped -2 1/5 degrees Fahrenheit per minute. So if I was going to order these from smallest to largest, I would say that's -3 1/10, and then -2 1/5, and then -5/8. So on which date did it drop the fastest? Well, this is definitely dropping the fastest right here. So that would be January 10th, 1911. Okay. All right. Now, why do you say that? Well, that's the furthest distance away from 0. So 0 is where the temperature would not change. Okay. And anything as you're getting further and further away from 0 on the left side of this thing. So here's 0. As you're getting, here's -5/8. Here's -2 1/5, and -3 1/10 would be over here. As you get further and further away from 0, the temperature is dropping quicker and quicker. Okay. So we will be doing 1 through 31 odd in class, and I'll see you guys later.